Alright, so a couple hours ago, Karl Jobst uploaded a video covering the most recent Dream accusations. It's his first video about Dream in over 4 years. And in this video, he uncovered some stuff that many people haven't seen before. He also talked about how the main MCC cheating allegations are most likely false, due to many people being biased against Dream and making incomplete assumptions about Dream actually cheating in the MCC run from 2020. He analyzes all the already known accusations and ends up saying that there's no hardcore proof to assume that Dream did cheat in MCC 11. But the things he covers next are actually very surprising. Here's what he said after covering the MCC 11 accusations.
However, as I said, in this particular circumstance, most people who are the loudest to call out obvious cheating showed clear bias and a lack of sound reasoning. With all that said, does this mean Dream didn't cheat? No, it doesn't. In a vacuum, I don't think this is enough information to make an accusation. However, we don't live in a vacuum. It is now time to take a look at a couple of other examples that I think are much more revealing.
Yeah, and here's where some very interesting stuff starts. Karl brings up more subtle and unpopular clips of Dream doing an Elytra challenge in MCC 12, to which Dream himself kind of admits that it was cheated in a way. I'll let this clip play in its entirety because it's very important, so take a look.
During MC 12, which took place in November 2020, they asked competitors to play the first level of Terra Swoop Force. The level consists of a long tunnel that players can fly through using Elytra. Dream performed really well, finishing the course in 28 seconds. All of his competitors were far behind, only starting to join Dream on the finish line after around 5 seconds of waiting. 5 seconds is a long time when the course was only half a minute in length. Dream's run was so fast, it even beats the world record to this very day. The world record set in November 2022 is 29.1 seconds, which is a full second slower than Dream. And it gets crazier because in actual speedruns, they gather a ton of speed before the race even begins by jumping into the course from a much higher location, whereas Dream started from a standstill. So even with a massive head start providing a couple of seconds of advantage, the best run ever done still doesn't match Dream. The speed Dream got is just impossible. And it's so impossible that Dream himself doesn't even deny it. According to Dream, it must have been a bug.
You talk about the Elytra speed thing. I mean, honestly, like that one, I just think it's a bug or something. Like I agree that I'm going really fast, but I just think it's a bug. I don't really have much to say because I don't know. Like I would just assume it's a bug. Like I think I won't talk about it much more, but like I really don't think that it would. I mean, obviously I did get first place, but I really don't think it would be that beneficial. Like I was very obviously lucky to even get to the end going that quickly because you could just slam into shit, and I was like trying to slow myself down as I was going. Obviously, it's like a one-off instance, so it's hard to recognize anything.
This is a really weird response for 2 reasons. The first being that it's almost certainly not a bug. Of course, glitches do exist and they can happen, but when they happen, they generally have random and unfavorable consequences. Let's assume for now that it was a bug. It would have to be a bug that didn't affect anything else in his game or anyone else. It didn't affect the graphics or controls, it only affected the speed of his Elytra. And it would need to be a bug that once it did affect his speed, and only his speed, it didn't slow him down. Instead, it sped him up. And when it did speed him up, it didn't do so in a way that was game-breaking or immediately obvious to his competitors or the admins. Instead, it was only a slight increase in speed, so that not only was it not obvious to everyone else at the time, but still enabled Dream to control himself well enough and to land perfectly in the finish zone. This is extremely unlikely. And the notion that it must have been a bug is also weird, because Dream had already admitted that his game was modified without his knowledge during his speedruns. MCC 12 was only a month later, and according to Dream's own story, it would have been before he found out his game was modded. So it's reasonable to accept that maybe his game was still modded without his knowledge. If I were in Dream's shoes and my game was actually modded without me knowing, which caused massive backlash and reputational damage, and then people found oddities in other areas of the game around that exact same time frame, the very first thing that I would assume is that my game was modded. That possibility would be forever ingrained into my memory. But Dream didn't do that. Instead, he seemingly ignored that possibility and claimed it must have been a bug. This seems really weird to me. I think the most likely scenario is that Dream's game was modified so that he had more elytra speed. And with that being the case, we now have 2 concrete examples of Dream's game being modified to give him an advantage over other players within the time span of 1 month. This is no longer a one-off incident, it's now a pattern.
Yeah, a lot of these cheating scandals all happening within like 1 or 2 months of all the big Dream cheating drama kind of just shows the real picture. You know, Dream ends up admitting that there was a mod that he was accidentally using to modify the drop rates in his speedruns, and then Dream says that there was a modification on this elytra race that was most likely a bug or something. You know, a lot of this stuff just starts piling up to the point where you can't really defend Dream in any way, shape, or form, but then at the same time, you can still enjoy Dream's content and stuff, just like I am. You know, I don't hate Dream in any way, shape, or form. I just think talking about this type of stuff, these cheating allegations, is pretty interesting because I really also want to get to the bottom of it. It's something I'm simply interested in for the sake of it being entertaining and just interesting. And this wasn't the only thing Karl actually talked about. About a month ago, there were new accusations against Dream, where a lot of PvP players actually accused Dream of using aim assist. And this was paired up with people thinking that Dream uses some sort of trigger bot, because there were some sus moments in 1 or 2 parts of his revival series. And when someone ended up calling out Dream on this, he actually left a comment on one of these videos calling him out, basically admitting to using something called the input blocker, which in one way or another is a trigger bot. And Karl Jobst actually ends up covering this aim assist drama really well. So again, I'll let the clip play in its entirety because it's very, very important and interesting.
I also looked at Dream's PvP, as there has recently been a lot of accusations that Dream was using aim assist.
By the way, he's just aimbotting here too. I mean, this is obvious, but I can't prove it. It's just obvious. Here you go. You guys ready? Wiggle, 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 wiggle. Stop. Wiggle, 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 wiggle. And he does this like the whole fight against every fight. So if you guys want to watch the whole thing, then do that. I'll put the VOD link in the description. Here, now you can watch it in full speed since you know what to look for. So now you know. Now you know. This can catch really terrible aimbots. Ready? You guys see it? It's pretty fast, but you can see it if you're looking closely. I wiggle it again there afterwards when I was talking. Here, I'll play it again. I'll try and catch it as fast as I can. Wiggle, wiggle, wiggle. See that? That was perfectly timed from me saying wiggle to when it was wiggling. If you guys can see it, you're going to be able to see it forever. It's going to be very hard for you to not see from now on. That is... I mean, nobody can do that. Can you do that? Do you have like mosquito wings attached to your arms that allow you to just... You know? You can't do that.
I looked at a couple of VODs from last year and last month, and to me, it seems pretty clear that Dream is using aim assist. Last year, I looked pretty deeply into the aim community, so I feel like my eye for identifying how well a human can track a moving object has matured a lot since then. And I can tell you that even the best aimer in the world will not be able to perfectly track moving objects that change direction. You will see many instances where the object changes direction, causing the tracker to overshoot their aim. This is not only normal, but it's unavoidable. And yet, when I watch Dream's gameplay, this is something that Dream rarely does. His tracking is impeccable. It is honestly very hard to find direction changes that he misses, and a lot of the time he reacts to direction changes in less than 1/10 of a second, which is well faster than our reaction speed. It's hard to even explain why this is obvious aimbotting. To me, it just seems apparent, which is admittedly not very compelling. So I decided to sanity check my conclusion with Dream's own gameplay from several years ago, and it's very different. Rewind to 2023, and suddenly Dream's aiming is a lot more normal. It's jagged, it's not smooth. He overshoots and then corrects like everyone else. But Dream's recent gameplay is extremely smooth and inhuman. I also compared it to the player Swite, who is one of the best PvPers in the world, and his aim is once again very normal. He doesn't perfectly and smoothly track his opponent like Dream. There are tons of overcorrections. His aim is a lot more sharp. jagged, and jittery. This is what aim from a top player looks like. There is a very clear difference.
Yeah, I mean, this once again just kind of proves everything, and especially when you slow the footage down, it becomes very clear. And also, just knowing Dream in general, he's not this godly aimer. He's never really been one, and when you look at the most recent clips of him playing PvP on stream and stuff, it's quite obvious that he's just using aim assist for whatever reason. And then when it comes to the same topic, Karl Jobst actually gave his take on why Dream would have been using aim assist. He talks about Dream breaking his wrist and how that could have influenced him on using some of these cheats like trigger bot and aim assist, which to me also make quite a bit of sense. Dream was probably having slight problems in performance when he was playing Minecraft, so in this time period of time, maybe the last 6 months, Dream has been pretty obviously using some sort of aim assist and trigger bot in some of the sequences, and as Karl already described, it is pretty obvious to me. But the weird part is Dream denying all these accusations and trying to make excuses about it, because I feel like if he genuinely just said what he was doing and asked people that he wants to use aim assist to train or whatever, I don't think it would have been that big of a deal. But because he's trying to hide it all, it becomes way more dirty in a way. And this is where Karl Jobst returns to Dream's parkour. Besides the accusations of the MCC 11 run, Karl Jobst went over some footage from 2023 where Dream was training and trying to beat his own PB. It's another segment I find very, very interesting, so check it out because it's very unique unseen stuff.
But there are other things that I simply can't explain away. There is a section on the course called Fishbones, which you can see the world record holder Sandwich Lord completing. Now let's compare it to Dream performing this section on his personal best achieved in November 2023. There is something that happens in this run that cannot be reasonably explained. Dream gets stuck on this pole and wiggles back and forth. To make the weirdness a bit more obvious, I will show you a compilation of this section taken from Dream's stream when he was trying to achieve his PB, also in November 2023. You can see that the path is always the same, and there is a set rhythm to his jumps. But even in his streamed attempts, sometimes he would get stuck on a pole, causing him to wriggle back and forth. Clearly, he is trying to jump around the pole, but strangely, he just doesn't jump. In fact, in every single case that he gets stuck on a pole in this way, he doesn't jump. He never jumps while also getting stuck on the pole. And he also never jumps too late and falls down. The only time he falls down is when he misses the landing. Of all of the evidence I've seen, this to me is the clearest evidence that he is using a macro to jump. Even if he didn't turn enough to get around the pole, he still should have at least jumped, because that's what he was trying to do. He only ever jumps when he runs far enough around the pole to run off the edge, and never, ever before. Now, if this happened once, you could maybe explain it away by saying he hesitated. But we have multiple streams of this, and it happens 100% of the time. To give you an idea about how consistent Dream was, I watched at least 8 hours of attempts between October and November 2023, and I could not find a single instance where Dream accidentally jumped too late and ran off an edge. Yes, 8 hours in a row. This doesn't mean Dream never runs off an edge. When he practices specific sections outside of doing runs, he falls off all the time. He also sometimes runs off an edge after he had already made a mistake and fallen off the course due to bad aim, or his auto jump being triggered by mistake, causing him to jump off by accident. However, in those circumstances, the run was already dead. But as far as losing a run due to falling off because of a late jump input, it simply never happens. This also doesn't mean he can complete the course easily every time, because many of the jumps require not just good timing, but also very good aim. And Dream messes up his aim all the time. In all of the attempts I watched, despite his jump timing being perfect, he couldn't reach the end of the course a single time because he always messed up his aim. It's also worth noting that in October 2023, Dream was doing the Fishbone section much more conservatively. But a mere month later in November, he switched up his technique entirely, this time simply running through without a care in the world. Regardless, for both strategies over the course of 2 months, his jump timing was 100% accurate over many hours of attempts.
And what's crazy about this is that I haven't seen this before. And knowing Karl, he really likes to get his info right. And one thing I also didn't realize about this is that Dream actually responded to this, which Karl included in his video. So here's what Dream said about it. And before I even play it, it's pretty obvious that Dream is just trying to desperately make stuff up. It's kind of weird to see Dream trying to make excuses for stuff like that, because a lot of this stuff is pretty old. But yeah, here's what Dream had to say about this.
In an attempt to explain his seemingly inhuman consistency, Dream uploaded a short video explaining how he times his jumps in the fishbone section, which enables him to perform his jumps so successfully.
So, first of all, I'm smacking my face into the glass pane, right? Purposely every single one, right? Whenever I can remember to, right? And what's happening when I do that is I'm doing two things. One, I'm resetting my velocity, right? So like my forward velocity, I'm holding W right now. I'm not moving, right? I'm not moving at all. There's no movement because I'm walking straight into the glass pane. So my forward velocity is getting set to 0. Then if I am walking at like a slight angle, right? I'm getting some velocity towards the edge, right? Just some form of velocity towards the edge. Now, of course, the more angled I am, the more it is, you know, whatever. And I'm also trying to make sure I land as close to kind of the middle as I possibly can. And then I'm doing this. What happens is if you walk forward and you press A, you can stay on the block, right? So if you're just like looking forward, you're not walking anywhere, press D, you can stay on it. If you're in the middle, press A, you can stay on it, right? But if you pair that with any kind of walking forward, but at an angle, so you're pushing against the block and it's pushing you sideways, and then you do it, you're off immediately, right? So forward, walking forward and I do that, I'm fine, right? I'm holding W right now, I'm fine. But if I add any kind of angle, even like, it doesn't matter if it's this angle, whatever, right? I'm off the next tick. So what I do is I'm landing, angling myself essentially enough to where I know that's the case, then pressing, you know, like landing, pressing, I'm holding W, so I'm just not letting go of it, landing, and then I'm pressing A almost immediately, right? And pressing jump 50 ms after I press A, essentially.
Dream claims that he looks to the left while strafing to the left, which enables him to perform a one-tick timing jump. However, this is not what he does at all. This explanation seems to be plucked out of thin air, and doesn't reflect his runs in any way, shape, or form. Even in the same video where he attempts to explain his technique, his demonstration does not match his explanation. Clearly, he does not look to the left when jumping around to the left. He looks to the right, so his entire premise is fabricated. He also tried to debunk the idea that his wriggles were evidence of him using a macro, claiming that he did the wriggles on purpose.
Actually, I'm back on a fresh world because I realized I didn't talk about the wiggle thing, so I just want to talk about that. So you know how I mentioned that whenever you're shifting left, like on the block here, that if you just hold W and press a key, that you'll just fall, right? Well, there is an exception to that. If you're on the far side of the block, right? You're on the very far side of the block, and you do the same thing. Oh, I fell that time, but it's just kind of random. See, I didn't fall. I fell, but like it does depend on based on the time you hold it. So if I find myself in a scenario where I over jumped or under jumped, so let's say I do this jump and I realize, oh shit, I land here, right? There'd be some wiggling to get myself to the middle, make sure I'm in the middle, and then go. So let's see if I can kind of realize that I'm going to do it. Been fine so far here, right? Okay. Yeah, so I actually just did it completely naturally. I wasn't even trying to demonstrate. I just did it on that far block.
However, again, what he explained and what he demonstrated were completely different to what he actually did during his streams. Absolutely everything about this video and explanation completely contradicts his playstyle and what he was actually doing. This is a major problem because once again it shows that Dream will essentially say random things to explain his unrealistic playstyle, even if it has no connection to reality. And if this really was how he does the section, why is it that on his handcam video and the stream he uploaded showing him playing the course, his fishbone sections were done completely different? He did them normally and more conservatively. But as soon as it was called out that he was using a different strategy than his PB and streams, he instantly switched strategies and came up with a nonsensical explanation. It is true that Dream showed himself going through the section several times in a row, but there is a big difference between playing offline over and over again until you are able to chain together several successful attempts in a row, and performing 8 hours of standard attempts in a row on stream while still retaining a 100% success rate. So the fact that this is an offline, clearly edited video where he still actually does fall off the course and concocts an explanation that makes absolutely no sense doesn't help. On Reddit, Dream published a post comparing his handcam stream to his MCC performance, and in my opinion, this is a red herring. I agree with Dream that the MCC runs aren't enough data to prove Dream cheated. And because Dream did use more conservative strategies during his MCC performances, it makes total sense. And I truly don't see any convincing proof he cheated in the MCC event in the parkour section. However, there is a huge difference between playing for 10 minutes during an MCC event using conservative strategies and performing 8 hours of attempts on stream in 2023 and not missing the timing of a jump a single time while using a completely inconsistent strategy. In my opinion, everyone has been distracted by MCC in 2020, but his stream attempts in 2023 are orders of magnitude more suspicious.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't really covered the MCC 2023 attempts, where Dream actually tries to get a PB, and I'm pretty sure he wanted to get a world record at some point, which I can't verify, but it does make sense that Dream would try to use some sort of advantages to get a PB or something. Even though the thing is, in 2033, nothing was really happening, so Dream just secretly cheating at that time seems nonsensical to me, but the evidence is pretty damning, I gotta say. But as I said before, this doesn't really change my stance on Dream. It was pretty obvious that he has cheated in the past, and I guess the only thing that really matters is that if there's a very competitive thing that Dream is a part of, he really needs to be hard-checked before the event, because him also being a very amazing coder doesn't really help. I'm pretty sure he by himself could code up anything he really wants, any type of cheat, anything that could subtly help him. He's very capable of that. I'm pretty sure everyone knows it, because it's very surprising that in the original expose that people made about Dream recently, a lot of this new evidence and stuff was not brought up. And you know, as Karl said himself, a lot of the MCC 11 accusations overshadowed some other and actually more accurate cheating accusations that can actually be proved by statistics.
So it's extremely unpleasant for me to have to say that I think he intentionally cheated. But if this were anyone else with the same evidence, I would say the exact same thing without hesitation. I cannot let my personal feelings affect my judgment when the evidence is so overwhelming.